Thank you. So, thank you guys all for listening in again today. So, we're talking about comfort foods made over. So, I'm Andrea Nicolai and I work for Polk County Family and Consumer Sciences. So, we have a fun topic today. And here is the webinar team that I have with me. So, I'm on the left, Andrea, and then Julie England, you just heard her talk. She's in Seminole County. And then Wendy Lynch is also on, and she helps watch the chat box in addition to other things. So thank you again for being here. So if you have any questions today, just please, if you would like to post it in the chat box, you can do so. You just hover over the bottom of the screen and the chat should show up if you don't see it, and then you click the chat and you can type something, and then we can see that, I guess. So here's what we have today. So we have the comfort foods on the healthier side today, and then sheet pan meals is next week. So you guys make sure to come back for that one, and it's the last one, so it'll be really fun. So one more thing would be to please, if you can, help me. You guys have been great. Those of you who listened before on completing this, I really appreciate it because I'm looking at the feedback so I can try to make these better. So just giving me that is very helpful. And we'll try to post the link and I'll also email it to you. So today we get to talk about comfort foods made over. So basically, I'm going to try the three big things you need to know, like what and the master steps, easy changes that you can make, and then some tips and tricks, okay? So just the goals are to give you the tools you need to make it easy to eat healthy without sacrificing that flavor, and kind of inspire you to be a little creative and just try some new things, okay? So some simple things. Okay, so comfort foods, we know typically foods that are high in fat and calories, low in nutrient dense vegetables, whole grains. They have an emotional response that usually they give us. It could be sentimental or safety, calm. It's kind of basically everything we're craving right now. So these foods are very, I guess, like thought of a lot. Okay, so the master steps, and now just something that can help you. I was thinking about maybe I should talk through different recipes, each one, but we all have different comfort foods. So what I wanted to do is give you some master steps that you can do with whatever comfort food you have. Okay, so you first examine the dish or the recipe, determine what could be changed, and then you make some changes and give it a try. And you feel better when you eat better. So just remembering those things, so it's worth it, okay? All right, so here's some easy changes you can make. So just think big picture here. I know we only have 15 minutes, but just some fun things, okay? So try to go with the whole grain. So when you can, swap out things like whole wheat bread and use whole wheat flour and whole wheat rice and pasta instead of the white version. So maybe you only try half at first, and especially that, definitely try that with flour when you're baking, just try half. But other things, it might not even notice it at all, and this would give you a lot more health, okay? So just some more ideas, using brown rice, quinoa, using it whole grain breadcrumbs instead of the white counterparts. You can use oatmeal, and so also in meatloaf, great option. So another thing you can do, big easy step is work on the protein. So, just a comfort food might call for adding ground beef or ground pork. And so just trying to choose the leanest version of that, or thinking, maybe could I switch that with ground turkey breast or ground chicken, without the skin, or could I use just chicken or fish instead of using something else? Those would be better options. And looking for round or loin in those beef names, those will help give you key tips that it's a leaner option. So like top round, round tip, sirloin, things like that. And then tofu, don't be afraid of that. Have some fun with it. It grabs on the flavor. So you can scramble it, stir fry it, bake it. So usually, if it calls for like this meat stir fry, maybe you could try some tofu in there. Okay, so also another big thing, and I would say if you, just need to remember one thing, this can help because you don't notice it very often, and it can really reduce the fat and help your heart, okay? So if you could take the meat that you're using and replace half of it with beans or lentils, or maybe vegetables, or things like nuts, those can be better choices. So thinking about the beans and lentils, there's like lentil beef sloppy joes, for instance, or burgers. You don't have to always have, here's the vegetarian burger, here's the regular burger. Maybe just try a 50-50 blend. Mushrooms, on the mushroomcouncil.com, they have a great recipe for mushroom blended mighty burgers. So they have this blendability, the mushrooms do. So you just chop them up kind of like they look like ground beef. And then they have, no fat, tons of flavor because of their umami taste. And so they would be good options. And then also the nuts. So another big thing is just, could I add some veggies? So you got the whole grains, could I swap that? Think about, could I swap out some of the meat? And then using vegetables, trying to add them in. So adding more or just adding some. So like mac and cheese, maybe you love that, right? Maybe you could throw in a can of peas or some frozen broccoli just to kind of give it some vegetables and, I guess, help your health. So you can shred them in meatloaf, meatballs, spaghetti sauce, and layer them in lasagna, like zucchini or summer squash, really good in lasagna. Just kind of melts right in there. And also adding them to canned soup. So if you have like minestrone soup or something like that, maybe you could add a can of mixed vegetables, for instance, just right in there, or just even half a can, but that'll definitely give you, improve the health. Same with chicken noodle soup, just adding in some more, chopped carrots that are cooked. And adding vegetables on top of frozen pizza, maybe just adding some extra or taking them out and adding them to pancakes. You can do that too, like something like sweet potato or corn. They're sweeter vegetables, same with carrots. And so you can just add those right in the pancakes. And sometimes, it just gives that moisture and texture, and increases the health. So using the vegetables, just adding more vegetables to like frozen meals or having them on the side. So say you're doing like a frozen takeout frozen meal, right? And so maybe you could actually portion that Hungry Man, into 2 different meals and then have some vegetables on the side, or you could mix it in there. You have like a stir fry mix, you could add in, use the vegetables that they call for plus maybe a half more. And then leaving the skin on mashed potatoes, or maybe try cauliflower or trying zucchini noodles, and using rice cauliflower instead of rice could be options. So here's a cauliflower bolognese with squash noodles, and it's just amazing. You saute the cauliflower, and it does have that texture of meat, and you can just, with the seasonings, can be a lot of fun and also really increase your health. So other big kind of thing, you'd want to try to reduce the fat and the sugar when you can. So we talked about a bunch of ways of doing that already, just by, trying to split the meat with some beans or some vegetables, and then adding vegetables kind of decreases, the amount you'd eat. And just the big ones then are when you're baking, right? Try to reduce the sugar by 1/3 or 1/2. Usually you can do that without any noticeable differences. So just start with the third, and just see. You can test it, but you can also, if you're looking for more sweetness, if you subtract it, then add like cinnamon, cloves, allspice, vanilla, because those tend to impart a sweet flavor in our mouth, but they don't have any calories. So they would be great options. And also, instead of oil or butter, you could swap mashed bananas, applesauce, pear. Just try for about half and then increase to start. Okay. And so adding just half the chocolate chips that the recipe calls for. My mom has a recipe, she has these chocolate chip cookies. She actually just puts raisins in for the other half. But you could just leave out half or use mini chocolate chips, and then using powdered sugar instead of frosting, and then mixing sweet cereals with the plain. So say somebody loves Frosted Flakes, maybe you could choose something that isn't so sweet, just even Cheerios, or you could do cornflakes, just mixing it half and half to kind of stretch that sugar. Okay, and then using full fat dairy products like cream and butter, sour cream, they can add a lot of calories and fat. So if we could swap those with things like Greek yogurt, skim milk, low fat sour cream, or cheeses, that can really cut the fat a lot. and using half the cheese. So thinking about, somebody told me once when they ordered pizza, she was saying, you know, one of the best things to do is just ask for double the sauce, half the cheese. And so those things can really help you. And then using cooking spray or vegetable broth when sauteing, or just use half the oil or fat that's called for. Okay, so when you are using fats, right, in your baking, so try to use liquid fats when you can. So oil instead of butter, and same with, obviously, you know, sauteing too. Same, try to use the oil instead of butter, just because we know those are better for our heart. And so you can, it changes the texture a little bit, you know, switching from oil to butter, you know, they each have their roles. So just start with a third or one half and then see after that. So another big thing that you can do that can make a big difference would be the preparation method. So instead of frying it, try like baking it, oven frying it, steaming it, roasting it, poaching it. You could grill it, you could braise it, you could broil it, you could boil it. So all these things. So for example, like chicken parmesan or fried chicken, right? If you could bake them instead of pan frying them or frying them, that can really, really help decrease the calories and the fat and just make it a little bit better for you. Okay, and you can still get a lot of flavor. So I thought a big one is just that creaminess. You know, instead of cream, what could we do? So evaporated milk, evaporated skim milk can be a good option. But another one would be pureeing vegetables, potatoes, chickpeas, or white beans. So they give it this creaminess, right, in your dish or your soup, but they don't have any fat, right? And tofu for heavy sauces. You use cottage cheese for ricotta when it calls for that in like lasagna, and Greek yogurt for sour cream, thinking about things like tacos. So pictured there, it's a roasted parsnip and pear soup actually, but there's no cream in that at all. So it did taste really creamy. So, and then just some additional things to consider. You want to try to enjoy the broth-based soups instead of the creamy. You know, if you're just like craving a soup for some comfort food, try to choose the broth ones, and then enjoy the red sauce when you can instead of the white. Okay, so thinking about things like lasagna, chili, pizza, mac and cheese, shepherd's pie, you know, how could you modify that? And so just trying to think about those things and just walking through what we just did. So, you know, like lasagna, maybe I could switch to whole wheat noodles. I could use cottage cheese instead. I could layer in some vegetables in there, or I could just use zucchini noodles instead of the normal noodles. And you could add some in the sauce, and you could reduce the cheese. So those things in shepherd's pie, you know, maybe instead of mashed potatoes on top, you could try mashed cauliflower or mashed sweet potato, and then having more vegetables in place of some of that meat. So there's lots of different things you can do, and, you know, having a lean beef. So just something just to remember, you know, we talked fast and through all these different things, but just like remember the goal, right? So the goal is to try to make half of our plate fruits and vegetables. So if you can just try to remember that with whatever you're having on one side, you know, try to balance it out. So embracing and balancing it. So say you love your mac and cheese as it is, and you know, you just you don't want to add vegetables right in there, and maybe just half that cheese is for you. Maybe things you could do would be just reducing the butter and things like that. You wouldn't even notice, but whatever it is that your comfort food is, if you can just balance out that plate, you know, try to make the other side, you know, the vegetable side. And remember too, it's the big picture, you know, what we eat over the course of it, like a day, a week, a month, that really matters. You know, it's not just one meal. And making the portions small, you know, that can be another thing too. You know, so if you're cutting the cake or baking those cookies, you know, just make the portion small. So just embracing it and balancing it would be a good thing. So I just have a couple of minutes left, but just a specific idea to try. It's one of my favorites, and so I just wanted to share it with you. Thought maybe you could try it too. So it's the banana ice cream or chocolate dip. And I just I love ice cream, so just if you take a banana, right, you can cut it into smaller pieces. It can be ripe, it can be not as ripe if you don't want the banana-y flavor as much, and then you freeze it. And what you do is you take it out, you put it in a food processor or a blender, and sometimes you need a dash of milk, but you add that and you kind of blend it up until it's like soft serve. And it's really crazy. It does really have that soft serve texture, and kind of a neutral flavor. So you can add in cocoa powder, You could add in peanut butter, which is my favorites, and then topping it with things like fruits or nuts, or you could just do that instead of the frozen bananas. You could use strawberries instead and do a sorbet. You kind of see the idea? And so then with the dip, which is what is pictured there, you see the chocolate dip. And so you just take bananas, so they haven't been frozen. So that's the only difference. Bananas, and then sometimes you need a dash of milk. But you can just add in cocoa powder and you have this delicious dip. It's really good. So if you guys have some bananas on hand and you're craving something like that, this would be a way better option. So just some one more thing here. So sheet pan meals is what we have next week. And then if you can please complete the evaluation that'll be sent, I would love it because that will help me next week and then always for the rest of the time if I ever do these again. So just does anybody have any questions or how could I help? I think, yeah, I've used up a lot of the time, so I apologize.
So Wendy, you were minding the chat box. Did we have any questions in there?
I don't see any questions at this point, but I did want to let everybody know that there is the Qualtrics link for the evaluation. One just popped up. It says, can you expand? I'm not certain what this one, Denise, if you can clarify your questions, that would be great. I know one point Julie made, which was so good about making this with kids, especially if you're at home, the kids are at home. This is a pretty simple recipe, the last one that Andrea shared, to get them in the kitchen, get them involved, and it's a healthy treat.
So Denise's comment was, and actually we were discussing that before we started, was can you extend the length of the webinars to make them longer? So Andrea, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think I just, I've looked at some of your comments and basically, I think it would be definitely options. Kind of a lot of info, and you guys are great at going through it with me. And so it'd be fun, just to do this and then, even be able to work through some of your comfort food dishes and, see how we can make those better, specific ideas because you learn from each other, too, is just, so if if we had more time, we could put them in the chat box and kind of just see what we could do.